For 2,000 galactic cycles, the conquered had basked in peace. Civilizations that once clashed over star systems now shared councils. The Varnak managed interstellar trade, the Talarians kept disputes civilized, and the Zentha watched all from their floating crystal fortresses. Harmony wasn't a dream anymore. It was policy. And then Earth broke the silence. Earth was supposed to be irrelevant. It was a primitive rock with an atmosphere, a few continents, and a loud, messy species barely capable of orbit. The Conquered's archives marked it pre-contact, observation only. The file hadn't been touched in 500 years. No scouts, no envoys, no warnings. The first time they noticed something was wrong was at the Meliar station. A distress beacon was launched, but it ended mid-sentence. When a recovery team arrived, the station was a massacre. Scorched metal, doors blown apart, weapon systems disabled with surgical precision, bodies all dead. The security footage barely made sense. A lone figure moving like a ghost, tall, fast, brutal. No energy weapons, just old-world tools, a blade, some sort of projectile weapon firing metal slugs. Whoever he was, he didn't fight like anything they'd seen. The Conquered dismissed it as a fluke. Pirates, maybe. Mercenary revenge. But then another outpost vanished. Then a dreadnought was boarded and left drifting. A cruiser, fully manned, disabled in under 4 minutes. Each time, there was a message scorched into the hull. "We remember." Admiral Shearzell of the Zentha sat alone in her quarters, replaying the combat footage again. The creature, this man, was terrifying. His eyes burned with a rage that didn't match his tech. His gear looked ancient, patched leather, bullet belts, welded metal armor, but he moved like a predator. A Talarian envoy called him an isolated anomaly. The Varnak wanted to declare him a war criminal and dispatch a bounty fleet. But none of them had seen the footage. None of them had watched him charge into a squad of armed guards and walk out covered in blood, breathing like an animal, shouting words that translators still couldn't get right. All they caught were fragments. "Burned my home. Your peace is built on bones. You think we forgot?" Back at the Galactic Council, chaos broke out. Delegates argued over his origin, his motive. The word human surfaced, but was quickly dismissed. Humanity had never joined the Conquered. Their name was buried in old records, categorized under failed first contact. There were rumors about Earth being lost during an ancient skirmish, perhaps destroyed. But he was real, and he was angry. On the cruiser Rendery's Vow, a technician found something chilling. Deep within the ship's data logs, the man had uploaded a single image before escaping. It showed an Earth city, burned to glass. A mushroom of fire rising behind a child's corpse. Shearzell couldn't breathe when she saw it. This wasn't an invader. This was vengeance. The man's name wasn't in any galactic registry, but his face became a ghost in every fleet officer's dreams. The scars across his jaw, the coldness in his eyes, the way he fought like he had nothing left to lose. He wasn't just human, he was the last human. His name, eventually whispered between trembling lips, was Cade Hunter, and he had only just begun. The council reconvened in emergency session. The delegates now sat quiet, like students caught cheating. "Who was responsible?" Shearzell finally asked. No one spoke. Because deep in Conquered history, long erased, there was a failed operation, a secret extermination. Earth had been bombarded after rejecting Conquered assimilation. It had been declared cleansed. But someone survived. And now he was tearing through their systems like a blade through silk. This man, this nightmare from Earth, wasn't looking for a seat at the table. He was here to flip the table and burn everything it stood for. Cade Hunter crouched in the shadowed maintenance shaft of the Zephyrian outpost, his breathing slow and measured. He watched two Zentha guards pass beneath the grated floor, their crystal-armored boots clicking with annoying perfection. These beings had grown soft, drunk on the illusion of peace they had built atop scorched worlds like his. They walked like nothing could ever touch them. He would change that. The outpost was a floating beacon of galactic cooperation, sitting right at the border of 3 powerful species' territories. It controlled warp gate access to 17 trade systems. Hitting this place would hurt, not just physically, but symbolically. The message had to be clear. Humanity wasn't gone, and it damn sure hadn't forgiven. He moved like smoke through the shaft, descending into the main reactor room. It was elegant, too elegant. The walls shimmered with a faint bioluminescence, the reactor pulsating like a sleeping heart. Cade found it grotesque. These aliens crafted beauty out of death. They danced while Earth's soil still carried radiation. While bones still turned to ash beneath ruins, no one bothered to document. With practiced fingers, he planted charges around the power conduits. Not enough to kill everyone. He wasn't a monster, but enough to send a message, enough to shut it all down. He paused only once, staring at his own reflection in a polished bulkhead, the scar over his cheek, the chipped tooth, the eyes hollow and tired. He barely recognized himself anymore. The mission kept him alive. Vengeance had replaced the parts of him grief had torn out. He triggered the detonation and sprinted toward the exit. Within seconds, the reactor groaned, and the station's lights flickered violently. Panic erupted. Alarms blared, doors locked. Cade used the chaos to slip into the emergency evac hangar, where a sleek Varnak courier ship sat idle. 2 technicians stood arguing, unaware of the human predator in their midst. He moved. The first went down silently, a knife across the throat. The second turned just in time to see Cade's boot fly into his face. The courier was his now. Within minutes, he was in the stars again, watching as Zephyrian outpost dimmed like a dying ember in the void. No casualties, just total system paralysis. The Conquered would feel that, and they would know he was behind it. Back at Conquered High Command, the response was panicked. Admiral Shire Zell slammed her palm on the table. This isn't just an attack, it's a pattern. He's striking communication hubs, transport nodes, diplomatic outposts. He's dismantling us piece by piece. The Varnak delegate snorted. He's one man. We'll find him and neutralize him. You've already tried, she spat. He's outsmarted your fleets 3 times in 7 rotations. The Talarian diplomat, calmer but visibly rattled, spoke next. He doesn't fight like us. He doesn't think like us. He's brutal, director. He fights like someone who already died and doesn't care what happens next. A silence fell over the room. Then someone whispered, "We should have finished the job." Shirzel didn't respond, but her eyes flicked to the projection of Earth's coordinates, once locked away, now glowing like a reopened wound. She felt a chill. Because if even one human survived that cleansing, maybe more had. And if they were coming too, inside the courier ship, Cade sat alone, stripping his rifle. His hands moved with the rhythm of a ritual he knew too well. Every part cleaned, every scratch remembered. He closed his eyes for a moment. He saw his sister, 9 years old, smiling on the porch of their burned-out home. He saw the sky above Earth light up with fire. He remembered the screams, the silence afterward, the years alone in the underground bunker, listening to old transmissions and finding out the truth. The Conquered hadn't offered peace. They had offered surrender. And when Earth said no, they dropped hell from orbit. Cade had been a boy then. He was a nightmare now. And he wasn't done. Cade's ship coasted through the outer rim of the Bellatrix Veil, running dark. Every beacon and tracker long stripped or burned. The stars outside looked colder here, the way he remembered them from Earth's last nights, when satellites fell like stars and the skies cracked with fire. He leaned back in the pilot chair, listening to a distorted audio loop, an old Earth broadcast. Static buried most of it, but the voice came through in fragments. "We fight not because we think we'll win. We fight because we have nothing left to lose." That sentence stuck with him. It had since he found the recording on an old hard drive buried in the wreckage of a burned-out radio tower in the Appalachians. A voice from some forgotten resistance, a whisper from a world nobody remembered but him. He wasn't a soldier by training. He hadn't been special forces or some genetically engineered super soldier. He had been a mechanic, a brother, a son. The war had made him something else. Survival had done the rest. And now survival meant drawing bigger blood. The Zephyrian outpost hit had worked. Conquered space buzzed with panic. Interstellar lanes were under tighter scans. Their military networks scrambled, reallocating patrols. But Cade didn't care about the patrols. He cared about what they moved to protect. The Red Bastion. It was a diplomatic fortress orbiting Aurelian Prime, Concord's pride, a place where interspecies peace treaties were inked, where the leaders of 3 galaxies once toasted a new age of unity, and where, if his intel was right, the truth about Earth's destruction still sat buried in classified files. He wasn't just hunting vengeance anymore. He wanted proof. He wanted the galaxy to see what they did to his people. But getting to the Red Bastion meant surviving the Harbinger Protocol. Back on Concord High Command, the Council had voted, narrowly and with much hesitation, to deploy their most brutal weapon, the Virex Legion. Not soldiers, not assassins. Something worse. The Virex were a breed of synthetic organic enforcers, grown in vats and trained in zero-gravity black chambers. They didn't ask questions. They didn't negotiate. They hunted. They were created for extinction events. When they were released, one Zentha commander said flatly, "If the human wants to fight like a nightmare, let him meet his own." The first Virex unit landed on Ral Shekar, where Cade had left his signature 2 rotations prior. They found nothing but corpses, and a message burned into the floor. "Every action has a cost." The message wasn't for the Virex. It was for the Concorde. Cade docked silently with a derelict freighter drifting near the Obsidian Belt. It was a ghost ship, just what he needed. He could tap into old Concord databanks here, reroute coordinates, and plant enough false signals to buy him time. Inside the ship, it was quiet, cold. Rust flaked off the walls, the kind of place where screams had once echoed, and now only silence remained. He made his way to the control room, rewired the console, and started scrubbing for Red Bastion access codes. As he worked, something flickered in the corner of his eye. Movement. He froze, then slowly turned. Standing near the corridor entrance was a figure, tall, armored, with jagged skin like obsidian and eyes glowing white. No weapon. It didn't need one. A Virex. So they were here. Cade didn't hesitate. He fired his slug rifle directly at the thing's head. The first round bounced. The second embedded itself in its neck. But the creature didn't flinch. It charged. Cade dove behind a console, pulled a knife from his belt, and waited. He timed its steps, then rose suddenly, driving the blade into a weak point near the base of its neck. The Virex shrieked, an inhuman, piercing sound. But it didn't fall. It grabbed him by the throat and slammed him into the wall. Pain exploded through Cade's ribs. His vision blurred. But through the haze, he reached into his belt and pulled a small canister. He jammed it into the Virex's side and activated the microcharge. The explosion was contained, but enough to throw them both apart. The creature writhed, its side scorched. Cade, bleeding from his mouth, limped toward the exit. He didn't look back. He had seen what they sent for him now, and he was still breathing. Far away, on a conquered warship, the Virex commander watched the feed in silence. The human had survived the first unit. "Deploy the next 3, the commander ordered. "And?" an officer asked cautiously. The commander smiled coldly. "Burn the station behind them. I want no more hiding places." Back aboard the freighter, Cade stitched up his side with trembling fingers. Pain roared in his skull, but so did something else. Not fear. Fuel. They thought monsters scared him. They hadn't seen what a human became after watching his entire world burn. They weren't hunting a survivor anymore. They were waking a goddamn extinction-level problem. Cade stared at the cracked viewport of the freighter as distant stars drifted by. Every breath he took felt like it scraped across raw bone. His ribs weren't just bruised, they were broken. The Virex had nearly torn him in half. But he was alive. And pain meant his body still had work to do. He swallowed the last of his anti-trauma serum, tossing the empty vial against the wall. It clattered, rolled, and settled in the silence like everything else in his life. Unfinished. The Red Bastion was just 4 systems away now. He had hacked the coordinates from the derelict's old conquered archives before that thing showed up. Its location wasn't public. Only the highest-level diplomats and generals had access. But like all arrogant regimes, they left breadcrumbs. Cade just knew where to dig. His stolen courier ship couldn't make the jump alone. Too old, too small, too conspicuous. He needed a ride, a shadow to slip under. So he called in a favor. The Drifter's Grin was a smuggler's ghost ship, a long-haul freighter captained by a skarn named Varys. Varys owed Cade his life, and a few replacement organs. They'd met years ago, back when Cade was still figuring out how to survive conquered space without being dissected or arrested. They weren't friends, just people with debts. The Grin docked with the freighter 6 hours later. The boarding tunnel hissed open, and there stood Varys, slim, reptilian, with cybernetic lenses over his eyes, and the perpetual grin that gave the ship its name. "You look like hell," Varys said, extending a clawed hand. Cade didn't take it. "I'm not here for compliments. I need to jump to Aurelian Prime." Varys's smile faded slightly. "That's Red Bastion territory." "I know." "Do you know how many conquered fleets crawl around that place? They'll fry this old tub in seconds if we blink wrong." "I won't blink. I'll get in, get what I need, and get out." Varys squinted at him. "Still chasing ghosts?" Cade said nothing. Eventually, the skarn nodded. "You still owe me 3 cores and a carbon-stitched medkit from the last job. You'll get 4 when I'm done. Or when you're dead." "Same difference." Varys sighed and gestured him aboard. "Come on, you stubborn bastard. Let's go make the conquered nervous." As the Drifter's Grin glided toward Aurelian Prime under a false merchant ID, Cade patched himself up with what little remained of the ship's medical supplies. The pain didn't bother him anymore. It was just background noise now, like the old screams he no longer heard when he closed his eyes. But something else did bother him. Why the Virex had come so soon. Concord didn't deploy them lightly. They were afraid. That meant he was getting close. Too close. The ship coasted past a cluster of asteroid fields, keeping low, out of sensor range. Red Bastion's orbit loomed in the distance, an enormous, sleek construct of crimson alloy and black steel, shining like a monument to arrogance. It wasn't just a fortress. It was a symbol. And it had to fall. Cade went over the infiltration plan one more time. He'd jump from the Grin in a stealth pod, hit the underside cargo bay, cut through service vents, and reach the central archives. Download proof. Blast it across every conquered channel. Force the galaxy to face the truth, that their peace was bought with genocide. He was ready to go. But Varys wasn't in the cockpit. Cade's instincts kicked in instantly. He scanned the ship's HUD. A silent ping lit up from beneath the hull, Concord tagging beacon. His heart stopped cold. "Varys," he said into the comm. No response. He drew his rifle, made his way down the tight halls of the freighter. No crew, no movement, just silence, until he opened the engineering bay. Varys stood there, comlink in his hand, eyes wide, caught mid-transmission. "Cade, wait!" The butt of Cade's rifle connected with his face before he could finish the lie. Varys crumpled. Cade didn't yell. He didn't even blink. He simply crouched, grabbed the comm, and replayed the last line. "He's on the ship, coordinates sent. Prepare to intercept. I want my credits clean." The Concord was already on their way. Of course, nobody stays loyal when a price is high enough, especially not smugglers. Cade exhaled slowly. He'd trusted once. That was a mistake. This time he wouldn't be caught alive. If the Concord wanted a nightmare, he'd give them one last lesson. He dragged Varys's body to the escape pod and strapped a fusion grenade to his chest. "This is for Earth." He ejected the pod, turned the ship hard toward the bastion, and activated every scrap of stealth tech in the hull. The Virex would find only pieces floating in space, but Cade Hunter was already inside their crown jewel. He had one chance left. And vengeance was just getting started. The underbelly of the Red Bastion was quiet. Too quiet. Not the silence of peace, but the cold, sterile quiet of something mechanical. Calculated. Cade moved through the maintenance shafts like a phantom, his body sore but steady, eyes scanning for motion sensors and drone patrols. Every few meters, he passed panels engraved with conquered creeds, hollow words like unity, balance, and peace through compliance. They etched these lies into steel, thinking it made their crimes noble. Cade wanted to carve Earth's name into their skulls and see how noble they felt then. He'd slipped in unnoticed, cloaked by the grin's dying stealth tech and the chaos from its staged explosion. They'd think he died in space. Let them think that. It gave him just enough time. The internal maps he downloaded were a decade out of date, but the core layout was the same. Every conquered structure shared the same arrogant design. Elegant, symmetrical, predictable. Predictability kills. He bypassed 3 drone patrols and disabled 2 security checkpoints using hacked subroutines. One of the consoles still had Earth listed in its planetary log, buried under suppressed threat, Project Cauterize. That was it. That was the name they'd used to erase his people. Project Cauterize. His hands clenched as he descended into the lower archive tier, a cold, dark place where the Conquered stored records not even their diplomats could access. This wasn't public history. This was the stuff they buried with bodies. He found the central data core, tall, humming, wrapped in glowing rings of plasma security fields. He knew he couldn't hack it from the outside. It required physical interface from within. So he did what no one else would. He stepped inside the inferno. The moment he touched the control pad, alarms screamed to life. 1,000 eyes turned toward his location. He didn't care anymore. They would come. Let them. But the truth would go out first. Lines of data rushed across the screen. Cade scanned them quickly, fingers flying. Images, videos, files. Then he found it. Planet, Earth. Status, cleansed. Date, Cycle 1421. Authorization, Council Directive 9, B-Zentha, Varnak, Talarian signatories. Video footage played on its own. The last seconds of Earth before it burned. Orbital strikes raining like fire down upon cities. People screaming into broadcast cameras. Children running. Soldiers fighting with outdated rifles and dying in waves. Then a voice. A conquered general. We gave them a choice, integration or elimination. They chose pride. Pride? They called defiance pride. They called sovereignty rebellion. They called mass murder. Balance. Cade ripped the data core from the terminal, slammed it into his pack, and ran. In the control tower above, Admiral Shire Zell watched the security breach alerts flash red across her console. "He's alive," she whispered. The Virex commander stepped forward. "He won't be for long." "Wait," she said. "If he reached the lower archives, then he knows. He's seen it. Then he must not leave this station." "Agreed," she said coldly, but something inside her twisted, an echo of guilt. She hadn't ordered the attack on Earth herself. But she knew. Everyone high enough in Concord Command knew. They just chose silence over justice. And now justice had a name again. Cade Hunter. Cade sprinted through the inner halls of the Bastion as blast doors slammed shut around him. Sirens screamed. Virex units dropped from ceiling hatches. The first came at him like a missile, blades for arms, rage in its synthetic scream. He rolled under it, came up firing, his slug rounds striking its weak points with ruthless precision. He knew these things now. He'd studied their joints, their breathing, if they had any, and the tiny delay between their attack patterns. The second one caught his leg, slashing deep. Cade screamed, stabbed upward, driving a plasma blade into its eye. It spasmed and collapsed. Blood poured down his shin, his vision blurred, but his hand clutched that data core like it was life itself. He reached the comms room, sealed, guarded by 2 Concord sentries. No time for subtlety. He lobbed a flash charge and charged in behind it. One went down screaming, the other raised a blaster, too slow. Cade crushed his windpipe with the butt of his rifle. He locked the door behind him, connected the core to the main broadcast terminal, and set the transmission to go out on all Concord diplomatic frequencies. The screen glowed. "Transmission live." Then his face appeared on every channel across the Concord's galactic web, on every ship, every embassy, every trade station. And behind him, the footage of Earth's destruction, the screams, the bombs, the cold, clinical orders from the Concord Council. Cade stared into the camera, broken and bloody. "My name is Cade Hunter," he said. "I am the last son of Earth. You called us savage, unfit, primitive." He held up the video feed of a child incinerated by a Concord strike. "You call this peace? I'm not here for your forgiveness. I'm not here for your pity. I'm here to remind you. Humanity remembers. Now the galaxy will too." Then he hit send. And the galaxy changed forever. Across the galaxy, time stopped. Diplomats choked on their words mid-speech. Commanders froze in war rooms. Citizens of the Concord, species who had believed in peace their entire lives, watched in horror as Earth's final moments bled across every holoscreen, every station, every ship. There was no dramatic music, no fancy editing, just death, as raw and brutal as the truth it carried. And Cade Hunter's voice, steady, angry, and undeniable, echoed through every corner of their pristine galaxy. On a trading moon near Teleria Prime, a group of children cried as they saw the vaporized ruins of a playground. On a Varnak ship, a young cadet dropped his weapon and vomited, realizing the war myths his people mocked had all been true. And deep inside the Concord's capital, the citizens didn't riot. They questioned. Because if this was real, what else had been hidden? Back on the Red Bastion, chaos erupted. Admiral Shearzell stood stiff in the command center as the broadcast ended, her officers scrambling to jam signals. But it was too late. The message had spread faster than they could trace, copied, resent, downloaded, broadcast by independent relays and neutral parties. "You waited too long," she muttered to herself. The Virex commander stepped forward. "Your compassion cost us control." Shearzell didn't flinch. "And your arrogance brought him here." Below them, alarms continued screaming. Cade was still alive. and he had to be stopped. "Seal Sector 9, she ordered. "Flood the oxygen lines with cryogas." The commander nodded. No more stuns, no more containment. Kill him. Cade staggered down a dim corridor, blood trailing behind him like a signature. His right leg was nearly useless, cut deep, freezing up from shock. His side burned with every step. The blast from the security room had singed off part of his jacket and left skin raw. But the message was out. That alone kept him moving. He passed a mirrored wall panel and caught his reflection. A hollow-eyed, blood-streaked ghost wrapped in torn leather, limping through the belly of the beast. He barely looked human anymore, just vengeance made flesh. The comm crackled. A voice, female, familiar, cut through. "Cade," he paused. "Shearzel?" "Yes." He expected a taunt, a threat, but her voice surprised him. It wasn't proud. It was tired. "You exposed us." "I did more than that," he said, wincing. "I exposed you." A pause. "You've changed everything. But if you die in here, they'll turn you into a myth, a terrorist. They'll rewrite it all." "I know." "Then escape. You've done your part." He scoffed, breathing hard. "That's not how this ends." She hesitated, then quietly said, "There's an emergency launch tube in Maintenance Deck 7. I'm disabling the auto turrets for 2 minutes. That's all I can give you." "Why help me?" "You think I didn't know?" she whispered. "I signed the damn authorization. I was young. I believed the lies. And now I can't sleep." Cade was silent. Then, 2 minutes? Starting now. He didn't trust her. He couldn't. But every path except that one was crawling with Virex, and his body couldn't take another fight. Cade forced himself into a half-run, dragging his injured leg, panting through cracked lips. Doors slammed behind him. Gas vents hissed open, but he ducked under them. He could hear boots, the metallic scrape of claws. They were coming. He turned a corner and saw the launch bay door. A tiny light blinked green. Unlocked. He was almost there when a shadow dropped from the ceiling. A final Virex, larger than the others. Its arms gleamed with plasma blades. Its eyes burned cold. Cade didn't scream. He just charged. They collided like meteors, metal against flesh, bone against alloy. Cade jammed a broken rifle barrel into the creature's side, using it as leverage. The Virex stabbed him, clean through the shoulder. He roared in pain but didn't stop. He slammed the creature's head into the launch door panel. Again! Again! Blood and sparks flew. A final lurch, and the Virex crumbled. Dead or disabled, Cade didn't care. He hit the panel. The launch pod slid open. Cade collapsed inside, locking the hatch behind him with blood-slick fingers. He activated the coordinates for a dead satellite orbiting in neutral space. Then he passed out. 6 hours later, the pod drifted silently through black space, picked up by an independent salvage crew who didn't recognize the half-dead man inside. Until they did. One of them gasped. "By the stars, it's him." The other whispered, "We thought he was dead." He wasn't. Cade Hunter had survived the Bastion, and the galaxy wasn't ready for what came next. Cade Hunter awoke in a haze of pain and artificial light. The first thing he saw was a dented ceiling, faded white, humming with soft life support noise. The second thing he noticed was the numb weight in his arm. Strapped, stitched, half cybernetic now. His shoulder had been reconstructed using scavenged parts and nanogel wraps. Not elegant. But it worked. He tried to sit, failed, groaned. A woman's voice spoke gently nearby. "Easy. You coded twice on the table." He turned his head. A human woman, mid-30s maybe, leaning over him with a datapad and a cautious stare. Human. His eyes widened. Where? "We found you," she said. "Floating near an old relay satellite. Took you on board before the Concord could. You're safe. For now. Cade's throat burned. There are more humans? She nodded slowly. We're scattered, hidden, some on mining colonies, a few in refugee sectors. Most don't even know what Earth really was. They were born after. And you? She hesitated. I remember. Cade's heart thumped weakly. What's your name? Rhea. Rhea. A name from the ashes. A name like home. He let himself breathe for the first time in what felt like forever. 2 days later, he walked, barely, through the corridors of a ship they called the Cinder Wraith, an old, repurposed explorer vessel flying no flag. Its engines were barely held together, its shielding outdated. But it had one thing no Concord warship ever would: conviction. It was crewed by outcasts, sympathizers, former soldiers who'd walked away from the Concord's lies. A few were even ex-Concord citizens, Talarians and Varnak, and even a Zentha medic, disillusioned after seeing Cade's broadcast. Because the message had spread like wildfire, in system after system protests erupted, riots, investigations. The Concord scrambled to contain the narrative, branding Cade as a rogue element, a terrorist, a fabricated construct. But the footage was too real, too raw. In the Varnak core worlds, students projected Cade's speech onto government buildings. On Teller Prime, soldiers laid down their weapons in silent protest. The Concord tried to plug the leaks, but the dam had already shattered. Even Shir Zell was called before a secret tribunal for security breach complicity. Her silence in those meetings spoke louder than any denial. The Concord was bleeding trust. And Cade had become more than a fugitive. He had become a symbol. In the ship's command room, Rhea sat across from him, arms crossed. You started a fire you can't control. That was the point. She studied him. So what now? You run forever? Let the chaos do the rest? No, Cade said. Now I finish what I started. He pulled up a stolen Concord directory, one he'd lifted from Red Bastion before the escape. A secret list, hidden in the encryption logs. It contained names, Project Cauterize signatories, commanders, generals, scientists, politicians, every being who had signed off on Earth's destruction. 37 names. He highlighted the first one, Counselor Malrix of the Varnak Dominion, retired, now operating under Concord diplomatic immunity in a pleasure colony near the Orbis Belt. Rhea narrowed her eyes. You're not just going to hunt them down? I'm not just going to kill them, Cade said. I'm going to bring them down publicly, one by one. Their empires, their secrets, their legacies, everything they built on Earth's bones, I'll reduce it to ash. She didn't smile. But she didn't stop him either. You'll need help. I don't want an army. You already have one, she said, tapping into the comms feed. Dozens of messages flickered to life. Coded transmissions from across the galaxy. We saw the broadcast. Tell us how to help. Earth should not have burned. They lied to us. We're done fighting their wars. What's next, Cade Hunter? He stared at the flood of hope and rage pouring in through broken systems and hacked relays. What started as vengeance had become a movement. No banners, no governments, just truth. And the will to fight. Far away, deep in the secure vaults of the Concord's capital, a secret order met in silence. Old, scarred, powerful. Hunter has become a myth, one said. That makes him dangerous, said another. We need a final solution. They all nodded. Then one whispered the words that would set hell in motion. Initiate Omega Protocol. Back aboard the Cinder Wraith, Cade watched the stars stretch as they jumped toward the Orbis Belt. He had 37 names, and one purpose. The galaxy would never forget Earth again. The Orbis Belt shimmered like a halo of forgotten light, a ring of glittering debris and lavish colonies built on stolen credits and secrets. It was here, beneath layers of entertainment, spice dens, and genetic pleasure labs, that Counselor Malrix of the Varnak Dominion hid, fat and retired, protected by conquered immunity and private armies. Cade Hunter had arrived. The Cinder Wraith coasted past orbital patrols using falsified mining licenses, its cargo bay loaded with stolen conquered tech and makeshift cloaking devices. He stood in the hold, armored again, patched with metal plates and burn-marked leather. His body was still healing, but his purpose had never been sharper. Rhea stood beside him, checking the infiltration gear. "We've never hit someone this high up before." "He's the reason the Conquered thought Earth was worth burning. He signed first. The others followed him. You could still send a team." "Number this one's mine." Malrix's private tower was a grotesque monument to opulence. Floating above the colony's outer rim, it sparkled with blue crystal and rotating advertisements. Cade slipped through the maintenance shaft like a shadow, planting jammers and signal distorters as he moved. Within minutes, all external communication was blocked. No backup, no rescue. He reached the upper quarters, bypassing 4 heavily armed Varnak guards using old-fashioned misdirection and a carbon blade that cut through armor like silk. He left one alive, deliberately, whispering a single phrase before disappearing into the lift. "Earth remembers." By the time Malrix's chamber doors blew open, the old counselor was already trembling, scrambling for a hidden weapon. He didn't find it. Cade stepped in, rifle aimed, face emotionless. "You!" Malrix spat. "I should have ordered your corpse to be incinerated when we glassed your planet." "You tried," Cade said, and shot him in the knee. Malrix screamed. 36 left, Cade murmured, circling the wounded Varnak. "You'll be the first, but not because I want revenge anymore." "Then why?" Malrix choked. Cade dropped a data chip beside him, still warm from the Cinder Wraith's decrypted servers. "Because your people will see this, the same way they saw Earth burn." He tapped into the tower's internal